and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got another book talk video to share with you guys, and today we are talking about The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin. I've got mixed feelings on this book, although I will say as a whole I enjoyed it. I think for me the biggest thing was I went into this book thinking it was going to be one thing, and it turned out to be something completely different. So let's just jump into the basic premise of this book. So the book starts off with a prologue, and we meet four very young siblings in the 1960s. Their names are Simon, Clara, Daniel, and Varya. And when we say young, I'm talking like the oldest one is 12, so they're all like 12 and under. And from their friends around town, they've heard about this traveling psychic who can tell you the date that you're going to die. So they scrounge up all the money that they can, and together they go to see the psychic one at a time. They go in, they go through, they come out, and from this prologue is told from Varya's point of view, and so we learn that she's been told the date that she's going to die, and she's going to be 86 years old when it happens. Once the kids come out, they're all kind of shook up and they don't want to talk about it too much. Most of all is Simon, the youngest. He's very, very shaken, and they don't really talk about it anymore. Then a few years pass and their dad dies, so that causes the two siblings who had grown up and moved away from home, they come back and they're sort of helping their mom get through the funeral and everything. And one night they're sitting around together and they're drinking and they're smoking and they're just kind of reminiscing about the past, and one of the siblings brings up the psychic, and the other ones are like, let's not talk about this again, especially Simon. So a few of them say what date they were given. Like one, Clara, I think she was told like in her 30s, and then Daniel in his 40s, and then of course Varya, which we already knew, at 86. But again, Simon still won't tell his date. All he'll tell them is that it was very young. He was told he was going to die very young. And so that kind of ends the prologue. And then what happens next is the book is cut into 4 parts. 1 part for each of the siblings. And from beginning to when we meet them to our time spent with the last one at the end of the book, it spans over 5 decades. Now for me, for whatever reason, I thought that there was going to be a touch of magical realism to this book. But there wasn't, which is fine. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. And I do love a bit of magical realism reading about it. I think it's fun, but that was not this book. So the first section of the book is Simon's. Now, it's going to be difficult for me to give too many spoilers because it doesn't flow as a full book. It's like sort of 4 little books talking about each of the children, because you know they're grown up at this point and they don't live near each other for the most part. So yeah. So I don't know how many spoilers we'll be able to give, but I will do a bit of a spoiler talk at the end. So if you've read the book or you want to see what the big discussion is, then you can do that. But it won't be so much spoilers for the book, kind of. We'll see. This book's a hard one to talk about, I find. So first we meet Simon. We find out that Clara moved to San Francisco, and she took Simon with her, even though Simon, I don't think he was quite 18 at that point. So the reason she takes Simon with her is Simon's gay, and she feels like he would have a better life with her out in San Francisco, where, you know, being gay is more accepted back in the 60s than it was in the town where they lived. So the mom is very upset. She's now home alone. Simon and Clara are gone. She had plans for Simon to, once he grew up, take over the family business, and she just feels really betrayed by, not Clara so much, but by Simon. But he goes and he starts living his life. He starts taking dance classes. Even though he had never been a dancer before, he just decided he wanted to do it, and he did it. And he just really starts going full force, living life to the fullest. And we kind of get the feeling that the reason Clara was so insistent on him coming and starting his life as soon as possible is because he had mentioned that the psychic told them that he was going to die young. So of course at this point, you know, no one knows how much stock to put into this psychic. Like, do you take it for what it's worth at face value and put a lot of stock into it? Or do you just assume that it's probably nothing and to just let it go? But of course, no matter what, if somebody told you the exact day that you were going to die, even if you were a skeptic and didn't believe it, there'd still be a piece of you, I think, that would keep that information in the back of your mind, and you'd always think about it. At least I know I would. So, because Simon was told he's going to die young, he just starts living really kind of recklessly. And, yeah, I don't know how much to say here. I will warn you too that in the first section, the Simon section, there's a lot of very graphic sex scenes. There's not in the rest of the book, but in that first section, there really, really is. And I normally don't mind it, but even some of the scenes where I was like, oh, that's a bit much. But that's just in the first part of the book. So, the second part of the book, we go to Clara. Clara is a little older now, and as she has her entire life, she has a lot of interest in magic. But magic as in, like, Vegas magic, like sleight of hand, card tricks, illusions, things like that. So, she decides that she's going to put her whole life, like she's going to give it her all and try to make herself a name as a magician. She eventually leaves San Francisco and goes to Las Vegas, where she goes there with a man who she's met who's kind of become her assistant, and she goes and lives out her life there and tries to make a name for herself, which she does over time. But even though she's making a name for herself in Vegas, she still has a lot of demons and a lot of darkness that follows her, and she struggles a lot with mental illness and addictions. Then the third part of the book goes to Daniel. When we last saw him, he was studying to become a doctor. Now in his portion of the book, he's, I think, in his early 40s, and he is a military doctor. And he's got a fiance, and he's spending a lot of time with his mom as she, gets on in age. And there's a lot of weight on Daniel's shoulders. There always has been, but even now more than ever, it's just he's weighted by a lot of things. And, yeah, I find Daniel's story, all the stories are sad, but I just find Daniel to have a particular sadness to him. And then the fourth part is Varia. When we meet her, she is, at this point, I'd say in her 50s maybe, late 40s, early 50s, and she works at a lab. She's a scientist. She works at a lab where she is studying longevity and human lifespans and things like that, and she's working with like monkeys and trying to see if what makes their life expectancy longer will also translate into humans. I didn't love that last portion. I didn't love Varia's story. It was, I don't know. I didn't love it. So, but the thing is, unfortunately, with each story, there's a concrete ending, and I don't want to get into it in this part. So, what I'm going to do now is, before we go to like the spoilerish bits, is I will just say it's an interesting book. It's a look at what does it mean to live versus what does it mean to survive, and yeah, it's a look at that. Like I said, I have very mixed feelings on it. I didn't dislike it too much, but I will go into the parts that I didn't like now in a moment. But it wasn't what I expected it to be, and I think it's such an interesting premise. Like, 4 kids are told the days they're going to die. How does that affect their lives? I just sort of wished it had played out a little differently, I think. But it was beautifully written. Chloe Benjamin, she's an excellent writer. Yeah, so if this sounds interesting to you, definitely give it a read. You've got nothing to lose, really. But now, yeah, I'm going to talk about the things in specific that I didn't like about this book. So if you want to avoid spoilers, now's the time to click off. Thanks for watching, guys. Okay, so here's what I didn't like about this book. As I'm sure you've gathered from what I've been talking about already, it's in each section of the book, almost, in the first 3 sections of the book, we're brought up to when each of those characters dies. And the death date was right, and they die very young. Now, here's the thing that sort of gets me. I'm going to tell you how the first 3 die, because we don't know how the 4th one dies. That one doesn't go up to her death date, because from the sounds of it, she's going to be very old. Like, it doesn't really matter how it's going to happen. What's most important and most interesting is the deaths of the first 3. So Simon, he went to San Francisco, and like I said, he starts living his life very recklessly. It's the 1980s by this time, and he ends up contracting AIDS, which at that time didn't have the name AIDS. Up to the point he died, they didn't know what it was. And while he did die on the date that was predicted, it's like, how much of a hand did he have in that, you know? Not being safer and taking precautions. So, to me, the book veers a lot into the realm of self-fulfilling prophecies. The one that really bugged me the most was Clara. She, like I said, she had a lot of darkness, a lot of demons, but what happens on her death date is anxiety builds and builds. Like, as the date's coming, she's getting more and more anxiety because she found out from like a journal or something that Simon had that the day he died was the day it was predicted that he would die. So what happens for Clara is, as the day is approaching, she's getting a ton of anxiety. And then when the day arrives, she drops her daughter off at daycare, and then she goes and kills herself. And I was like, what? So the only thing I can think of is that she was so scared of how she was going to die that day, she decided to take matters into her own hands and do it herself before it could happen. But again, then it's like, well, then it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. With Daniel, as his day's approaching, a bunch of stuff leads up to him being in contact with the police about this family of scam artists. And one of the family members is the woman who gave them their psychic reading. And then the police is kind of like, well, she may be different. She doesn't really, spend a lot of time with the rest of the family. She's kind of off on her own. So they couldn't, maybe she's not part of the scam. But Daniel just kind of loses his mind, and he goes hunting for her. And he finds her, and he's going to kill her. And the police come, and they're like yelling at him, like, put your gun down, do not shoot her, we will shoot if we have to. And that's how he dies. The police kill him when he's trying to kill the woman who gave them the reading. So, I mean, I don't know. As each of them were dying, the reasons why, it was just kind of, I don't know. It seemed like, yeah, but you were making that happen. With the exception, a bit of, Simon, it's not like he made it happen, but he just, since he thought he was going to die young, he threw caution to the wind every chance he got, and just completely, lived very carelessly. So yeah, there you go. And then in the fourth one, it just leads us through Varga's life up to a certain point. But we're not told how she dies. I'm guessing it's probably just old age or something of the sort. But yeah, there you go, you guys. That was The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin. Again, like, she's a beautiful writer. The story's well written. It was just kind of, I was like, I don't know if I love that. I thought it was going to be different is the main thing. But if this sounds like it's your cup of tea, definitely give it a check. If you've already read it, I would love to know what you think of it. Because when I was looking around on Goodreads after I was done and after I had my ideas all sort of laid out on what I wanted to talk about, it seemed like people either loved it or they hated it. It had a ton of 1-star reviews. And people were just, a lot of people I was reading to were put off by the sex scenes in the first part. But yeah, I'd love to know what you thought of it. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, you guys. I'm going to insert a shout out right here. Today's shout out goes to Leela's Insight. Leela is such a sweet lady. She is so supportive and so kind. She puts up a lot of great content. Let me see if I can click here and we can see. Like unboxings and hauls and things like that. And yeah, I just really love her channel, and I think you would too. So I'll leave her link down in the description bar below, of course. And if you go and check her out, please let her know that I sent you.